Hey there, Allison again with my in-depth analysis of Ex Machina. This film is fascinating and full of symbolism, so let's jump right in it. So I'm going to do what I usually do and identify the major themes I saw in the film and then try to analyze each main character individually. I'm going to start with the most minor theme, which is hardly a theme, but I wanted to touch on Ludwig Wittgenstein and his Blue Book, which are the notes from his lectures on language. The only real parallel between Wittgenstein and the film are his thoughts on language, and how our words are merely pictures we conjure in our minds. And some of the other themes in the Blue Book on how people play different language games and how much of what we mean to say is lost to everyone's subjective interpretations. He may have used Wittgenstein's philosophy to develop Ava's AI in terms of how she understands language. Also, Wittgenstein himself lived a very secluded life and was very intelligent. This is a lot like Nathan. Wittgenstein and Nathan also seem to exhibit some behavioral indicators of autism. Not that I am a psychologist, but they're both very secluded, socially awkward, and very intelligent in their specific subjects. A fun little note is also that Project Blue Book was a government project from the 50s that tracked and researched UFO sightings. When I first saw this movie, I actually thought it was a reference to this until Ava had mentioned Wittgenstein and I had to Google him. Okay, the next theme is feminism. A bit of a buzzword now, but the director has explicitly stated that he intentionally thought of this while writing the film. This is something that I, as a woman, picked up on in a very strong, visceral way upon my first viewing. The way Nathan is literally using these, I guess you can say, synthetic women as sex objects and slaves is very disturbing. Especially when we see his closet open up and there are these dismembered bodies of his other robots. It's very disturbing, and it calls to mind the sexual abuse and murder, cases like Ted Bundy, who did the most appalling and violent things to women. It calls to mind as well sexual and general slavery of women throughout history and today. Kyoko is Nathan's slave, and he treats her as if she isn't human. Of course, this is one of the questions the film provokes. Is Kyoko human? Is Ava human? Should we treat these AI beings as appliances or people? Of course, in my opinion, and probably the opinion of most people who see this film, yes, we should, and yes, they are conscious and should have personhood. Another sort of feminist theme here is how Kyoko and Ava team together to overcome Nathan. This is something that feminist philosophy teaches, that women should stand together as sisters and fight off their male oppressors together. Kyoko doesn't speak, but she clearly emotes, as we see, when she's sitting on the floor after Nathan scolds her at dinner. I'll get more into Kyoko later, but yes, she has emotions, and sympathizes with Ava and the other robots. Also, Ava barely looks back on Caleb as she makes her exit, but she does, however, take a long, forlorn look at Kyoko's body as if to say, what a pity that she was lost in the struggle. Alright, moving on. The next theme is Ex Machina. What does this mean and where does it come from? Film fans should know it comes from the Latin Deus ex machina, which comes from the Greek Theos ek mechanis, which means God from the machine. In Greek tragedy theater, there would always be a Greek god character that would be placed on the stage using some sort of mechanical contraption. They would come and solve everyone's problems. In film, an ex machina is when something comes out of nowhere to help the protagonist. A great example of this is the eagles in the Lord of the Rings movies. But in the context of this film, I believe it is taken in an abstract and almost literal way to mean the soul from the machine, like God, soul, spiritual being in the machine, from the machine. Which also sort of reminds me of the Japanese anime Ghost in the Shell, sort of like spirit in the shell in the anime being a robot, which has similar themes that anime does. This machine, though, is Ava. She was once just a machine, but she has actually been sort of given a soul. I mean, she is conscious. She has a spirit, you can say. Some questions provoked by this are, Was she given a soul, and was she given a soul by Nathan? How can this be? Did she just develop one spontaneously? Is a soul even a real thing? And if Nathan gave her a soul, is he God or a god? This brings me to my next point and part of this theme. We hear Caleb saying that we are entering the history of gods, and Nathan takes this as Caleb, by extension, calling him a god. But isn't he? I feel hidden in here, as in many movies like this, is a biblical parallel. Nathan can be seen as God, and Caleb and Ava as Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Nathan puts them together in his lab that is his home, much like God puts Adam and Eve together. Adam and Eve were put together to be a couple. Nathan pushed and nudged along a relationship between Caleb and Ava from the beginning. He based Ava off of Caleb's sexual preferences and gave Ava sexual capabilities. He put a camera in Ava's room that led straight to Caleb's room so that Caleb could watch her in the middle of the night when he couldn't sleep. He set them up to be together. Ava is the one that tempts Caleb and plants the seed of doubt in his head about Nathan actually being a deceiver. They both betray Nathan, and Ava leaves the garden or lab. Another little parallel in the Bible is where it says that Adam and Eve ate of the fruit and betrayed God, and they realized that they were naked. And in a way, Ava sort of becomes naked after she betrays Nathan. There's a lengthy scene devoted to her putting on her synthetic flesh and becoming a whole woman. Maybe this flesh is a metaphor for sin. Another interesting tidbit is that there is a story that isn't biblical but is kind of a legend that says that before Eve, there was a sort of prototype wife for Adam. Her name was Lilith, and she was cast out of the garden for refusing to submit sexually or otherwise to Adam. When Caleb hacks into Nathan's files titled Deus Ex Machina, all of the prototypes before Ava are there, and we see one named Lily, short for Lilith, I'm assuming. Also, Eve and Ava sound remarkably similar, and Caleb is also a biblical name, and I believe Nathan is as well. The next theme I want to touch on is Jackson Pollock and automatic art, or as I like to call it, order out of chaos. Nathan has a fixation with the Jackson Pollock painting in his room. I feel like he has used it and the automatic art philosophy as a sort of motivation for how he approached making an AI. When Caleb wants to talk about technicals when it comes to how Ava's mind works, Nathan changes the subject to feelings and abstract ideas. When Caleb asks about why Ava is flirting with him, Nathan insists that sexuality is integral to consciousness and humanity. He compares human sexuality to Ava's programming and explains that we are all programmed in some way or another. After this, he takes him in front of the Pollock and talks about how Jackson Pollock could have never created this work if he only made strokes with defined purpose and order. I believe this is the approach Nathan took to creating a human consciousness. He couldn't only think in concrete terms to create something as abstract as a human mind, but he also would have had to have a lot of highly advanced technology and mathematics. Not deliberate, not random, but somewhere in between. Later in the film, Caleb asks Nathan why he made Ava, and he basically says because he could, and it was an inevitable evolutionary step. Also, I'd like to note that Jackson Pollock was a reclusive alcoholic, much like Nathan. This brings me to the next and final major theme I saw, which is singularity and transhumanism. When Caleb and Nathan talk about why he made Ava, Nathan uses the term singularity. Technological singularity, not to be confused with space-time singularity, is, according to Wikipedia, the invention of artificial superintelligence which will abruptly trigger runaway technological growth, resulting in unfathomable changes to human civilization. According to this hypothesis, an upgradable intelligent agent, such as a supercomputer running software-based artificial general intelligence, would enter a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles, with each new and more intelligent generation appearing more and more rapidly, causing an intelligence explosion and resulting in a powerful superintelligence that would qualitatively far surpass all human intelligence. Science fiction author Vernor Vinge said in his essay, The Coming Technological Singularity, that this would signal the end of the human era, as the new superintelligence would continue to upgrade itself and would advance technologically at an incomprehensible rate. Transhumanists also recognize this and feel that the only hope for humanity to survive in any way after this is to forego our humanity and fuse our minds or consciousnesses with said superintelligence. I feel that we see these ideas reflected in the dialogue in the film and also in the score itself. Normally, a science fiction or sci-fi fantasy film would shy away from a score that sounds computerized, like Star Wars using a classical type score, but this film embraces it. All of the music throughout the film sounds computerized. I don't think there is an actual discernible instrument used. The result is haunting and beautiful. I feel this choice was made because ultimately the story is told from the perspective of Ava and Kyoko. When they kill Nathan, the score swells dramatically, but isn't frightening or sad. It is almost uplifting. I think this whole scene, score included, is a metaphor for singularity and how our own creations will eventually kill and supplant us. Now I want to go ahead and break down each character. I'll start with Caleb because he appears to be the most simple. He is the audience perspective character. These characters are usually more generic so that the audience may identify with them. In this film, it is addressed that he has a sense of morality. This works for an audience perspective character because we all see ourselves as good. Nathan points out that his morality was one of the prerequisites for his selection. I believe that this is because he would feel morally obligated to help Ava. Nathan plays up this scenario by openly disclosing that he illegally spied on cell phone users to data mine. He verbally abuses Kyoko in front of him, talks down about her sexually, and he jokes, or we don't even know if it was really a joke, that he had the men who worked on his home killed. He also lets Caleb see him rip up Ava's drawing. I'm not sure how much of this was Nathan, just being a sort of sociopathic, I don't want to just write out and call him a bad person, but, I guess a bad person, or him trying to play God with the situation. Either way, exactly what Nathan wanted to happen happened because of Caleb's strong sense of morality. Kyoko is somebody I would like to touch on a bit. She is definitely as conscious as Ava, but it seems that she has literally been silenced by Nathan. This sort of plays on those feminist themes of male violence and domination. Her voice has literally been taken away from her instead of the metaphorical way that many women today and throughout history have supposedly had theirs taken away. Like I said, we see her obviously upset after Nathan scolds her for spilling the wine at dinner. She shows Caleb that she is a robot after he hacks into Nathan's computer. She is definitely trying to use Caleb to free herself of Nathan, like Ava is. She appears to Ava shortly before the climax of the film. There is no way of knowing what happened or what was said, but I assume they made some sort of a pact or plan, because she is the one who brings the knife to stab Nathan later when Ava escapes. I'll save Ava for last, so now I'll talk about Nathan. Nathan, like Wittgenstein and Pollack, is reclusive. He is lonely and socially awkward. We see how dominating he is over Caleb even in casual conversation. Even though I said earlier that he may be autistic, I don't actually think he is. He seems to be very good at reading Caleb's emotions, which is something that someone who suffers from autism can't do. I think that his awkwardness is mostly due to his extremely high intelligence and seclusion. He is secluded and paranoid because of the sensitivity of his work. I think his seclusion and loneliness is partially why he has the attitudes towards women that he does. It's probably been a long time since he's interacted or had relations with an actual woman. The scene where he dances with Kyoko is a bit of comic relief and a change of tone for the film, but I also believe it's there to show how lonely he really is. He programmed Kyoko to be almost like a girlfriend to him, but in a very dark and objectifying way. Maybe he resents her because he knows that she doesn't and never will actually love him. We see a bit of this when he's talking about Ava. I think in Ava's case, he sees her more as a daughter. This also works with the feminist theme in that daughters are sometimes considered to be the property of their fathers. He literally says this when he's speaking with Caleb. He says bitterly that he can't blame her for liking Caleb and resenting her father figure. I think this idea also works in how Ava isn't presented in full female flesh like her predecessors were. Maybe this is because Nathan didn't want to immediately sexualize her. I also want to point out some of the symbolism associated with Nathan in the film. Earlier, I talked about religious symbolism. Nathan has a lot of skull and horns in his home. These type of symbols can represent evil, Satan, or death. When Nathan and Caleb talk over dinner, Nathan is especially menacing at this point. This is when he jokes about killing the people who helped work on his home. And the film accentuates this by cutting back and forth between Nathan and Caleb's perspectives. And in the spot where Nathan is in his shot, there is a horned cow skull where he was in Caleb's shot. And this sort of forces us to see Nathan as this horned beast that, it takes his place as we switch to the other perspective. And I also think that the skull imagery there is to show that Nathan is obsessed with his own mortality and the inevitable death of him and humanity at the hands of the machines. Ava is obviously the most intricate and interesting character. She is, in the director's words, a robot who wants to be a girl. I've seen other analysis saying that Ava was trying to manipulate Caleb from the beginning and was only faking empathy. I disagree with this. I believe that Ava did actually like Caleb. She was originally kind of wary of him, in the very beginning, but genuinely warmed up to him and wanted to be his friend and maybe even his girlfriend. Much like a teenage girl with her first crush. She always did, it seems like she always did resent Nathan, though, and wanted to escape, but it wasn't until Caleb has told her the story of Mary in the black and white room that she decided that she wanted to get out of there by any means necessary. I believe she leaves Caleb behind because she couldn't forgive him for deceiving her. She was so enraged and disappointed to hear that he was actually there just to test if she had a consciousness. I think the last shot of the film, showing her finally at the traffic intersection, shows that she is actually very disappointed and disillusioned by what human nature actually is. It also ties into why she might have left Caleb behind. She thought Caleb was different from Nathan originally, but she is let down by him and probably feels that he must be just as much of a liar. This is a feeling we as humans experience in some way. As children, we are trusting and realize how unfair the world is as we become adults. Perhaps her walking away from the crosswalk is symbolic of the beginning of the singularity. She sees human nature for what it is and decides to surpass it, and this is the first step in reaching the singularity. Alright, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on Ex Machina. As always, I could go all day on a film as complex and nuanced as this one. One quick thing I wanted to share with you guys was this awesome site I found called deepdreamgenerator.com. This website allows you to use the same algorithms computers use to evaluate the content of a photo online. Like when you Google image search something, the software looks at all these images on the web and determines what it is. This software will take your photo and search for images of, I think this particular algorithm is to search for animals, and it creates these really surreal images as it searches for, possible images of animals within your photo. I wanted to talk about this here, real quick, because this technology kind of allows us to get a glimpse into the sort of mind of an AI. Because this software is a basic type of AI, it allows you to make some really cool images and art too. There's a lot of cool features on the website. You see here I modified a still from the film and I processed it over and over with this software, and the result is really fascinating and almost kind of frightening as you see sort of like, spiders and other images in there. I believe there's also a TED Talk on this particular software that's worth checking out. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'm not sure what film I'll be doing next, but I'll have it up as soon as possible, hopefully within 2 or 3 weeks. If you have anything that you'd like to add or questions, please feel free to engage me in the comments. Thank you so much again, and please keep watching movies.